Hello and welcome. Well nigh since our independence in 1947, we took upon ourselves to build a great country. But legends of the past that were created or rather imposed upon us, many left unbroken. The country was broken into two, but in our mind space, what we were told by the likes of a Lord Curzon in 1905, that India is not one but two countries, the two nation theory, was perpetuated. It was perpetuated for convenience, it was perpetuated for community politics. For those 80 years, we could not solve the dispute in Ayodhya. There is a reality that we can't shy away from. We have to look at it historically, academically, but more importantly, with the ability to move on. The reality is that if you want to visit the ancient temples of India, you need to go to South India, because in North India, most of them no longer exist. This anomaly is being corrected as we speak in Ayodhya tomorrow. We were told just months ago that all hell would break loose, that the country would rip itself at its seams over the dispute in Ayodhya. That hasn't happened. And the reason that hasn't happened is because in action, the voices of most people in this country who are calm, reasonable, moderate people have spoken louder than those who have hijacked the stage, hijacked the agenda. It's very easy to provoke people and provoke communities to meet an end. It is very difficult to do the path of Satyagraha. So in this context, where today we are being told by certain leaders who build their lives and careers working out of a Babri Action Committee, that still they have 1,000 issues regarding the Ayodhya Bhumi Pujan by the Indian Prime Minister, let us get in a more nuanced perspective. There are voices in the 200 million strong Indian Muslim community that require as much space, as much appreciation, and as much conscious thought as the ones who say the most provocative things. Joining us on the broadcast, I have Shiba Aslam and Dr. Zafar Mahmood. Both are senior members of IMPAR, which was founded a few months ago to provide such alternative voices from India's very large Muslim community. Also, we have Firoz Bakht Ahmed. He is Chancellor of the Maulana Azad National Urdu University, joining us in just a bit. Shiba Aslam ji, when you examine what we were told, and I want to make the distinction, ma'am, the distinction between the building of a Ram Mandir in Ayodhya and the separate aspect of the criminal action in tearing down the Babri Masjid are two different things. If we disaggregate them, ma'am, as you stand, what is your view on what is going to take place in Ayodhya?
In your intro, you were saying that all hell will break loose if it is going to happen. I want to say one thing, Rishabh ji, here, that during the 20 or 25 odd years of this movement, there has never been an occasion where Muslims went out of their way to do anything, physically presenting themselves and do anything to either save it or to attack it or do anything at that site. So you have to understand that throughout the common Muslim masses have shown lot of maturity, and they have been, there has been considerable amount of association also from the issue. For many years, it was a local issue. The west and northeast and the south of India was not even much aware of this mosque and its existence. And after it became, because it was causing a lot of disruption and a lot of chaos as far as law and order was concerned, then it became a national issue. So for a very large portion of the history of Ayodhya movement, if you see, there wasn't any Muslim organization or movement or any kind of mass movement that came out to say
No, but there
or to
was
attack
the Babri Action
But-
Committee.
Yeah,
Some of whose members
are
very virulent. They are virulent to this day. At this point of time, they are also against what's happening tomorrow.
Yeah, I understand that, and acutely aware of that. There were certain individuals who came together on this agenda, and they were fighting a pre-decided, preordained battle. That is what I would say. But we have just celebrated Eid and Rakhi and wished each other profusely, and it is in the continuity of that zest that government is officially doing it finally, and we are happy that it is done by government, not by some akhada or some parishad or some organization that was for the vitriolic and for all those wrong things. They were there at the forefront some years back.
Okay.
So
if we look at this, ma'am,
government, and both the government, state government
Okay.
and central governments are involved, and I am sure that it will pass peacefully.
Okay, so you in fact actually find it better that the government is doing it rather than some organization. So if I look at it from a different perspective, ma'am, to what has often been the view of members of the Babri Action Committee, is that a sore point has today been removed or tomorrow will be removed. That was perpetuating misapprehensions, miscommunication and misgivings between two large communities in India, that actually this is a moment for us now to move on, to look at our similarities and not our differences.
Last year when this judgment came, the Supreme Court judgment came, didn't you notice the reaction of the community? Most of the Muslim community intellectuals welcomed it, that we wanted it to get settled through Supreme Court, and now whatever has been decided, we are welcoming it and we wish them all the best. And we understand that it has to be done in some way or the other, and the Supreme Court way was the best possible way.
Okay.
In fact, there was a view within the community that we could have given, showing some kind of fraternity and brotherhood towards the community. We could have given it, even if Muslim side would have won the case, they would have given
as a gesture,
it gracefully,
as a grand gesture,
as a gesture and as a respect towards Lord Ram. So there was this churning going on within the community.
Okay, so let me get in Dr. Mahmood into this conversation. Dr. Mahmood, much to the good graces of the Indian population, of all communities, they have borne out the true Satyagraha of India once again. Because we were being told right before the time that arbitration was being talked about, that oh my God, everything will go wrong, and there were extremist positions. But since the Supreme Court ruling, we have seen equanimity even during a time of great trouble in a pandemic. We've seen equanimity. Can we move on tomorrow?
I feel that we have already moved on today. In fact, we have moved on yesterday, we have moved on today. So obviously we are moving on, and tomorrow is a part of today. So I would say that number one, that Islam itself teaches that the followers of the faith should respect the nation and of course the national sentiments, and should also respect the other faiths, should try to discern the larger humanitarian purpose. And in this overall context, one can also see that this long movement of Janam Bhoomi Babri Masjid was mostly a political movement, and thanks God that it is behind us now. And the legacy learned from the Britishers of dividing and ruling, that phase is over. So we are back to normalcy, mutual love and affection. And this Tata, this was something which was unnecessarily hampering the mutual love and affection. So that has gone now. And I feel the Muslim community of India joins me in celebrating.
Okay, now you as an organization at the IMPR have already issued, an appeal regarding tomorrow and for, peaceful prayers across the country of all faiths. What does Ayodhya now become then? Is Ayodhya now to forever remain emblematic of Hinduism per se? Because I've been speaking Dr. Mahmood, over the past few hours to people from Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, people of the Buddhist faith, people of the Muslim faith coming from Muslim majority countries. They have the Ramayana, they embrace the concept of Ram in a different fashion to how we've politicized it. What does Ayodhya then become tomorrow?
That's what I was telling you, and I'll go back there, saying that the Quran, the basic book of scripture of Islam, teaches that God has created and God has sent messengers in every part of the world, in every phase of human history. So there is no, and of course, he has given books to many of them in the local languages, etc., etc. So there is no way that such a huge country of ours, that is India of subcontinental proportions, there is no way that God would not have sent messengers here. Now add this, juxtapose this to huge names here, Lord Rama, Lord Krishna, Lord Mahavir, Lord Buddha. So it is a normal expectation inference that these people would have been the messengers of God whose names are not mentioned in the Holy Quran. So much so that a sizable section of the Muslim community considers this as this faith.
I see.
That because the Quran says that you have to believe in the messengers and respect them even if their names are not given in the Quran. So
Okay.
Lord Rama is one of them. So Lord Rama is as dear to the Muslim community of the world, to Muslims of the world, to Muslims of India, as it is dear to the
Okay,
Hindus
so
and
is there an understanding, Dr. Mahmood, is there an understanding of an Indic civilization, or you would call it a Hindustani or Bharatiya civilization, if I don't want to use the colonial epithet, that is apart from religion, that imbibes culture and that goes back 4,000 or 5,000 years, that religion constitutes in its diversity a part of what it represents, but it is not the whole of what it represents?
See, the issue is that the religion or the culture, what are they? They should be understandably the derivatives of those factors which are helpful in creating and maintaining mutual love and affection in the society at a given point of time. So to put them, to bracket them in different periods, and because of that, to try to obtain something which may divide ultimately the people of the given time.
So-
I don't think that the majority.
Okay, so
of
we are
the
learning
people-
lessons. We are learning lessons. I'll tell you, it's a mainstream media lesson. It's much
Majority
easier.
of-
It's much easier
majority
to
of people of
approach
India
provocative issues
not
and
fight it.
stoke a fight, right? You stoke a fight. You get one person who has very hardline views from Hindu side. You get one hardline views from Muslim side, and you say, fight it out. The substance doesn't matter. So we need to move beyond. If the lessons can be learned here, the lessons can be learned in the larger community. Let me get in Feroz Bakht Ahmed into this conversation. Feroz Bakht Ahmed, let me now crystallize this. Have we struck a blow to the two India theory at the time the Bhumi Pujan happens tomorrow? Will that be the end of the two India theory?
Rishabh, absolutely. This is a time of celebration. It's a historic time, and today will be the eve of the laying of the foundation of the historic Ram Temple tomorrow at Ayodhya. All the people of India, irrespective of to which faith they belong to, they have welcomed it. And let me tell you one thing. This famous couplet from Shair-e Mashriq, Dr. Sir Muhammad Iqbal, है राम के वजूद पे हिंदोस्तां को नाज कहते हैं उसे अहले नज़र ही इमाम हिंद. So as earlier also my worthy friend was saying that Lord Rama is also very near and dear to us, to all the Muslim community, and as Allah is Rahmatul Allah is Rabbul Alameen. In the same way, Lord Rama is Imam of all the Muslim community, the entire world. So we call him Imam Hind, number one. Number two, this issue is dead and gone and buried. Hindu and Muslim, I suppose, should be dead and gone and buried, except a few people, few fringed minority who want to keep this issue alive. This issue of Hindu and Muslims, I think it could have been buried on November 9, 2019, when the historic Supreme Court decision came. But despite, there is a feeling in my heart, had the Muslim brethren with their extended hand and with their all heart into it, had offered this patch of land to the Hindu brethren.
No,
and
as a
outside
gesture,
the
yes.
court
But
this would have made
but we are
India
talking about
once
that.
again
I mean, I have
a
people
Soni
talking about it
Chidiya.
with me.
But
I think
just a minute, just let me complete. Please, you will let me complete. Rishabh, you will let me complete.
Yes,
If
but I also
Muslims
get the
have,
chance to ask a question,
lost that
Feroz ji.
opportunity, Allah gives more opportunity. It is written in Quran. Second opportunity is now Muslims should come forward. They should participate in Kar Seva. In the same way, I believe the non-Muslims, our Hindu brethren, will also participate in the Kar Seva for the mosque. This will create an atmosphere of
So Feroz Bakht
interfaith
Ahmed,
bonding,
for
cementing
those
of
people
harmony.
who globally
I think
will try,
it will
and
be
I have
like
to ask
what
this
Modi
question.
says, making of a new India.
Who will tomorrow take photographs of Narendra Modi at the Bhumi Pujan in Ayodhya and say, look, this is an Indian Prime Minister creating a Hindu Rashtra. What do we answer them? How do we stand up as a country to these global forces?
You see, if you have asked this question from me, let me answer it. There is no question of Hindu Rashtra or Hindutva, and if Modi comes to Ayodhya, he also goes to other religions, places like, whenever he goes to Muslim countries, he visits mosques, he visits churches. And let me tell you, I think if I am right, in 2015, he also conducted a huge World Sufi conference in which, he spoke about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He spoke about Allah. He spoke about 99 names of Allah. So he truly, the kind of Prime Minister he is, I call him, a Prime Minister who is Damdar, Dildar, Wazadar, Jandar, Wazandar, Kamdar, and above all the most Imandar. Prime Minister in the Committee of Indian Prime Ministers, and he has proved it. No other ruler of India actually was able to do what Modi has done. He has laid the new foundation.
Let me ask Ms. Aslam the same question.
With the foundation of this Ram temple.
Ms. Aslam, there are difficult conversations which we should still be able to have. Now, I'll explain a premise to you. The premise is that what's going to happen in the New York Times or in Al Jazeera tomorrow, or certain quarters from Pakistan. They will say, look, this is a Narendra Modi in building the Ram temple. He is putting into stone a Hindu Rashtra, which is anti-secular in its credentials. India will be targeted in such a way. The question is often asked that how do then the 200 million strong Indian Muslims speak out? I'm not saying India has all its issues resolved. We have issues, serious ones. But when India is being defamed, how do we speak out as a Muslim community in this country?
See, as far as the Muslim community living inside the country, what we have to say and what we have to, feel is much more profound, much more real than whatever the other people are saying. But on the question of secularism, it is not the Indian Muslims who have to go and defend Mr. Modi. It is the government, Mr. Modi, and the majority community that have to show its own credentials. Imagine the situation in Pakistan or in Bangladesh or in Afghanistan. Whom are you going to ask on these questions of secularism and minority rights and minority well-being, etc.? Governments are going to answer that. There are so many things. It's a large country. There are so many things happening within the country.
Muslims are being persecuted.
Ma'am,
Muslims are being persecuted in China right now. You know what's happening with the Uyghur Muslims. The Americans have raised their voice. I don't see Muslim leaders in India raising their voice. I don't see the OIC raising its voice. Pakistan has eliminated its minority population. There are only 6,000 Sikhs left in Pakistan as we speak.
Yes, and that is why they are answerable. Pakistan government and Pakistan's majority community should be made answerable.
But are they being made answerable?
About the minority.
Is the Chinese government being made answerable for what's happening with the Uyghurs, you think?
Do you think Uyghurs are answerable to their situation, or the government of China is answerable to their situation? Tell me.
No, but as a
Who is
Muslim
going to
community in this country, what is? I mean,
That
you
is
have
why I am
elected
saying-
representatives
no, no.
as well.
For me,
what role
India is
should
the
they take?
best. For me, India is the best. But I am not the spokesperson. I am not having the data and the situation and whatever
Okay,
is going on.
so let me
in
simplify
various
the question.
Parts of India.
Is the building of a Ram temple in-
For me, India.
Yeah, is the building of a Ram temple in Ayodhya, ma'am, the creation of a Hindu Rashtra?
See, there has we have to understand that declaring India a Hindu Rashtra, or without declaring, doing things that can give this feeling, this this idea that India is finally a Hindu Rashtra. It's all up to the government. But my question is, I am not afraid of Hindu Rashtra. So don't ask me this question that what about the Hindu Rashtra. My concern is that is the only Hindu Rashtra on this planet is going to be benevolent, decent, just, fair to its minorities or not.
Okay, fair enough.
I would ask this question.
Okay.
I am not afraid of Hindu Rashtra. I would more than welcome a Hindu Rashtra that is just, that is fair, that is decent to everybody.
Okay, well,
so it is to be understood that let us don't malign Hindu religion or Hinduism. We must understand that there is a fine difference between the supremacist approach within the religion
Fair enough.
and the religion
Okay.
and the philosophy
Okay,
of the
that's fair
religion.
enough.
And I own my Hindu history and I own my Hindu civilizational, all that has been given to me. Our thinking, our idioms, our language, everything has been enriched, and we are so much rooted into our own Sanatan,
Sanatan Dharma,
philosophy.
yes.
So don't
Okay, okay.
take it away from me.
Okay,
please.
fair enough. That's fair enough. Let me get in Dr. Mahmood on that specific point. Dr. Mahmood, now, there are several crises that take place across the world. I mentioned what's happening with Uyghur Muslims in China. Not even Muslim countries are questioning China. Imran Khan doesn't seem to have heard of it. The Turkish president doesn't seem to have heard of it. The OIC doesn't want to make a comment on it. Countries like Pakistan have persecuted their minorities into oblivion. They've almost ceased to exist. At a time like this, when India gets called out as being Islamophobic, I know we have issues. What becomes the role of people within the Muslim community in India to speak out on India's behalf?
No, I think I would go by what my predecessor has said, Mrs. Aslam, that speaking out on India's behalf is the duty, and we have full faith also in that of the government of India. So speaking out on behalf of India, there is a system already prescribed, and if Muslims of India have to say anything in this regard, they will say to the government of India. And the government of India, the voice which is given out by the government of India shall include, should include, and does include the voice of the Muslims of India also.
Okay.
So Muslims are not a separate entity as far as the interaction.
Okay,
of
so
the
let
Indian
me pose the question to you, sir, that we've seen that the Labour Party, for example, in England held a conference in which it accused India of Islamophobia. A lot of Labour MPs wrote to the European Union Human Rights Council to have India investigated for violation of its secular credentials. These are members and individuals. These were not governments doing this, sir. Members of parliament, members of organizations, peer groups who happened to come incidentally from Pakistan, lords who were doing this. They weren't representing a government, yet they chose to target India. So how does the reverse not apply then, that we should then not speak up to defend ourselves?
See, it's not a very ideal situation that is worth emulation by the people of India or by the Muslims of India. If some individual in some capacity other than the government in another foreign country chooses to take some line of action and tries to address some issue in individual capacity other than the government's line, it is up to him or her.
Okay.
But it's not necessary that is an ideal situation, and the Muslims of India should also do that.
Okay, fair enough.
Muslims of India have very consciously decided to put full faith in its government, the government of India, and let the government of India represent the Muslims also abroad.
Okay, well, it's a very nuanced position, and I don't want to belabor it. Let me quickly take a last word from Feroz Bakht Ahmed. Feroz Bakht Ahmed, the question then resides that tomorrow we know the Al Jazeeras of the world and the New York Times of the world, what headlines they will be publishing. We know what Imran Khan is going to be saying. He's going to be saying, look, RSS agenda, Hindu fundamentalist BJP, creating Hindu Rashtra, look in Ayodhya what they've done. Is there a responsibility or a duty in the Muslim community here to then speak up when such things are said?
Yes, a very sensible question, Rishabh, you have asked. Let me tell you first thing. As a Muslim, as a law-abiding Muslim of India, I would care a fig what the other channels or the other countries or the other newspapers, whether it is from US, UK, China or Australia or any other country. Why? Because I am only concerned with my country and the well-being of the entire world in a positive manner and nothing being negative about that. Now, the duty of the Muslims of India is one opportunity which they have actually lost earlier, where this case could be settled out of court. Had they offered this patch of Ram Janmabhoomi as part of goodwill to their Hindu brethren, now I would request them through this channel, if they are listening to me. I am nobody, I am not a thekedar of or dukandar of Muslim votes of Muslim community. But to make India a place where Hindus and Muslims have gelled well over the centuries, whether from the time of Bahadur Shah Zafar or after that, I would request them to participate in the Kar Seva, so that it sends a positive message to Hindu brethren who will also participate in the Kar Seva of the Masjid. So I think we have always gelled well like sugar and milk. We should continue that way. And as my friends have earlier said, that India is the land of harmony and tranquility. Let us celebrate this foundation of Ram Temple as a part of Hindu-Muslim unity,
on that reasonable
what
note,
we call Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb.
Okay, on that reasonable note, I've run out of time. For having a very cogent and reasonable conversation, these are still not easy issues. They are still difficult issues. There is a weight of history that exists upon them. But if we talk about them in a reasonable and calm manner, we will understand the positions better, because nuance in those positions are important. It's the extremist positions that have gotten us into trouble in the past. Maybe that's the lesson to be learned from all of it. I don't think there are many people in this country who have a fundamental problem with the building of a temple in Ayodhya. Perhaps it will remove a sore point and it will help us move forward as a country. And if that won't happen, well, then we've done this generation and our children a great service.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.